Welcome to the One Bite at a Time podcast, where we create diet-free homes one bite at a time.
We're on. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, Jarrod. Good to see you again. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
good morning. So
Morning.
I appreciate you coming to the office. And what I like to do is get to know someone that we're working with and have our audience get to know you too. So
Sure.
introduce yourself and what you do.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Dr. Tom Bailey. I'm an internal medicine physician here in Austintown, Ohio, and I am the founder and the lead physician for Mahoning Valley Direct Primary Care. We opened up in 2024. A little bit of background about myself. I grew up here in the Youngstown area, lived here my entire life. I did my training at NeoMed, that was my medical school, and then did my residency training for internal medicine here at the local hospitals at Mercy Health Youngstown. I did the traditional insurance-based medical practice in the early 2000s for about 8 or 9 years, and just quite honestly got burned out with what was going on with healthcare even back then. There's just so many issues with insurance is getting in the way of me taking care of the patients I felt was necessary. Just seeing a lot of red tape, a lot of administrative burden, and so I decided at that point to transition from an office-based practice to a hospital-based practice. So around that time, what was happening was everything was changing over to electronic medical records. A lot of doctors who were in their offices found it very difficult to take care of patients both in their office and the hospital. So they were deferring a lot of the inpatient hospital care to what was called hospitalist. So essentially what we were was a group of doctors that would just take care of you if you came into the hospital and your family doctor was unable to come in. So we grew quite a bit over the next several years with the work that I was doing in the hospital. And at first I'm seeing maybe 10, 11 patients a day, which is very reasonable. These are sick people, heart attacks, strokes, cancer, all kinds of things.
Big stuff.
Yeah, big stuff. And unfortunately, as more doctors stopped coming into the hospital because it was hard to divide their time between both, our group just got significantly busier. It got to where we were seeing 20, 25 patients a day.
Wow.
On the weekends when I'm taking care of things for my partners who had time off and they would cover me, I'd cover them. On the weekends, I'm seeing 40 plus people a day. It was just way too much. So for those reasons and for some other personal reasons at the time, I stepped back from medicine for a bit. And when I felt it was just feeling a calling to get back into medicine and feeling like I wanted to really get back out and help people again, I wanted to go back into outpatient medicine, but I wanted to find a way that I could help people that was kind of free of all this insurance stuff that's going on. And we'll get into more of that as we talk here today. But just seeing how much of an interference it was in patient care, I wanted to know, was there a way that I could do this where I didn't have those burdens? And so in doing research, I came across this model called direct primary care. And I wish I could take credit for it. I didn't actually. There was a doctor over 20 some years ago on the West Coast. His name was Garrison Bliss. And he was kind of really, really frustrated with what was happening even way back then in the late 1990s with how insurance companies were affecting medical care, what he found to be a lot of inefficiencies in the way that healthcare was being delivered to patients. And so he decided to take a step, a really kind of radical step at the time, and said, well, I'm going to separate from the insurance companies.
That's
and
big.
Big one, and just really run my practice like a gym membership, where for a flat fee per month, he would give all the care that he could provide in his office. And if patients had health insurance, they could use it for what we call the big stuff, the things that you can't get in an office setting, surgeries, imaging studies, things like that. And it worked. He found that the patients really appreciated not only the affordability of it, but the fact that he was able to spend more time with them. It was much more of a personalized medicine. And so this kind of movement grew over in the next 20 years or so to where we are today in the United States. There's about 3,000 or so practices called direct primary care practices or direct care practices, where we quite simply just don't contract with the insurance companies. We offer our services for a flat monthly fee, which makes it affordable for overwhelming majority of people. And in addition to that, probably the most important thing, we're able to provide more personalized care. And that's really what it's all about. Being able to spend time with patients, being able to find out, really what that person needs, and not just kind of checking off boxes and saying, okay, you've got blood pressure, here's your blood pressure pill. You got asthma, here's your asthma medicine. Really kind of looking at the whole person and getting back to just what it should be, which I feel is the doctor-patient relationship is the most important thing. So,
of course, and I appreciate the comprehensive background. I mean, I've known you for a while, but I didn't know every piece of that puzzle. So, so I really appreciate that.
Sure.
And I love that, you have the blessing of being able to step back and look at healthcare in such a different way,
Right.
and have that calling to come back and try a different way. And that is still today, that's a pretty radical shift from what a lot of people are used to. And so it's been going on for almost now 30 years at this point.
Yeah,
from
just
the
about.
90s.
Yeah, it was like 1997, 98 is
Oh,
how
wow.
we first started, this Dr. Bliss first started to practice like
Yeah.
this. And obviously, as things have kind of changed so much in healthcare over the last decade or so, we just see more and more doctors across the country exploring this model, because there's so many that are just very frustrated, as the patients
Oh,
are.
yeah.
We feel it too. And I think
You
sometimes
do.
maybe patients don't realize it. And obviously, being a healthcare professional yourself, you see it from our side of it as well. A lot of patients think, well, they're so frustrated with trying to navigate the system, they don't realize that the doctors and the healthcare professionals are too. So we're
Yeah,
trying
we
to
have
find
our
these kind of
issues.
different, unique ways of going around that. And again, just getting back to the basics.
Yeah, I love that. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
you can still be affordable, and you can still help people at the same time, and it's still worth it for you. And it's
Mm-hmm.
such a good balance. And I hope that healthcare continues to trend this way, where you
Sure.
can form a connection, and it's not just checking boxes. And,
Right.
especially with a lot of our clients, or really people in general, a lot of people have, a fear of the doctor.
For sure.
The white coat syndrome. So that's such a big thing, and I feel like this kind of a model allows the patient to connect with their provider and come to them with their problems and feel safe, knowing you're not going to be judged. You're not going to be, typing on your computer and just checking boxes and clicking things while they're talking to you. And
For sure.
that's such an amazing shift. And we have a similar perspective. We sit with a client for an hour. We get to know them. It doesn't matter what we tell them if they don't like us, if they don't trust us.
Absolutely.
So do you see that shift, from when you were practicing as a hospitalist to now, how the connections have changed?
Oh, absolutely. And when I had my outpatient practice before, I thought we had a great connection with patients. We really got to know our patients, and patients came to trust us. The problem is you're in an insurance-based system, there's always just push to keep going more and more, because there's so many expenses that are involved in running an insurance-based practice. So you have to, unfortunately, because of the economics of it, you have to put more people in per day. And when that happens, now you're shortchanging people. Even though you do get to know them the best you can, they begin to trust you. You still would like to get to know them better. And so with the model that we're using now, it definitely gives me ample time to really sit down and talk with people. Most direct care doctors are spending anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour each and every visit with their patients.
amazing.
So you really get to know that person. It's not just, well, how's your blood pressure numbers today? It's, how's the family doing? How's the kids doing? What type of stresses are going on in your life? And so many of those things impact our health. And in a system where you're maybe doing visits every 10 minutes, you don't get that. You can only really look at the numbers or check the boxes.
That's all.
So when you get to know patients like that, they really do begin to trust you. They have confidence in the advice you give them, the recommendations. They're more likely to follow through, as opposed to just, hey, you've got blood pressure, take this pill and I'll see you in 3 months.
I love that. Yeah, it's such a big difference. And so when you have people come in, or, in my industry, I'm always thinking, why do people not want to see a dietitian? So I can put in my marketing why that's not the case. Why we're not as bad as people think, or we're the food police. And
For sure.
I'm sure as a doctor you get that too. So what do people say that they hate about going to the doctor? What makes them kind of avoid you?
Sure. So I think a lot of it is the system is so inefficient.
Yeah.
Let's take affordability is a huge thing right now. Let's take that out of the equation for the moment. Probably the second most common complaint that patients have about going to the doctors is it's just so darn hard to get care. And I have heard this from so many people in the last 2 years that we've been open. It all starts with just the phone call to the office. So you call an office, and what happens? You get some ridiculous, complicated phone tree, or you're on hold for 10, 15 minutes. So there's number one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Then maybe you're sick that day. You call the office. You finally get to a real live person you speak to, and they tell you, oh, there's no appointments. We can only see you 3 weeks from now. So now you're already kind of getting people irritated, because number one, they couldn't get to somebody right away. Now you're telling them they can't be seen for 3 weeks. So now you finally have that appointment. You go into an office, you get a waiting room full of people. You maybe have 5, 6, 7, 8 patients sitting there beside yourself. And then you're waiting half hour, an hour. You get back to the room. You're waiting a little bit more. And then the doctor comes in. They've got their nose buried in a computer. They're typing on stuff. And 10 minutes later, they walk out the room, here's your prescription, and that's it. You really don't feel like you've
That's it.
really maybe learned much more than what you already thought. I've been it's been very surprising to me over the last 2 years that we've been open, the patients that have come in and said to me, hey, you know, my last doctor didn't even examine me. And I can't believe that's actually going on, but it's true. And you know, it's not to say those doctors are bad doctors, but unfortunately it's the system. The system has made things so inefficient with healthcare. And it's just this kind of what I call the treadmill mentality. You just got to keep running on it. You're going from room to room to room to room, not really doing a lot other than just patching holes, so to speak, and not really getting into what's really important for that person. So I think that's probably your original question was, what do people hate going to the doctors the most? Well, it's kind of all of this inefficiencies from just even trying to get an appointment. And then when you do finally get an appointment, it feels like you're not being heard because things are being processed so quickly.
Yeah, it is so systematic. And I feel like deep down there's no doctor that enjoys that process.
Correct.
But like you said, you get so stuck in that system, it seems like there's no way out, you know, and you have to make such a shift and do this direct primary care situation to achieve that. And so I feel for the doctors out there, and I definitely feel for the patients, because even when you get to have that conversation with a doctor, I mean, I've heard so many times this exact phrase. We'll have somebody come in, they'll explain, and they weren't referred by the doctor, they just found us on their own.
Sure.
They'll explain they're trying to lose weight. That's a big thing we help people with. And so they're coming in and they just say, well, my doctor told me to stop eating chips and hit the treadmill harder. I've heard that those two things at least a dozen times.
I know.
In the last couple
I actually had a patient in the last, and this was crazy to me. It was last summer. I had a new patient who was struggling with her weight, had some other health issues, and I said, you know, what types of diets are you doing? What did your previous doctor tell you? And I was just shocked. This patient said, yeah, my doctor told me to eat lean cuisine. I'm like, are you kidding me?
That's
what
you're getting.
I'm like, you know, and I understand, you know, back when I was in medical school, this would have been the late 90s, early 2000s, the medical nutrition training was poor. And I think it's improved since then. But, you know, if we got more than a day, from my recollection, that would have been a lot back then. Granted, there's a lot we have to know, a lot we have to learn.
You have to learn everything.
For sure.
It's comprehensive. So I get it.
Yeah, so I get why you couldn't spend like 3 months on nutrition. And that's why we like partnering with people like yourself, because of the fact that, you know, I don't know it all. I have a better understanding now than I ever did, because a lot of that's been self-learning. Yeah. But you still are going to know much more about it than I do. So that's why we love partnering with healthcare professionals like yourself. But yeah, getting back to this, so I understand that maybe the advice from a doctor isn't going to be the best because your training in the past wasn't the best. But I think we can do a little better than that. And so, you know, when you get to stories like that, I mean, it just completely frustrates patients.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking for us to hear.
For sure.
And I think it's, you know, the lack of the education on that side is one thing, but also sometimes their attitude toward it, because they're in such a, you know, a treadmill way of doing things in their system. They're just like, oh, you have this problem, this is the solution. There's no discussion about it. This is the way. Right. Like, you have to eat lean cuisine. And, you know, they probably told 100 patients that. And so it's so frustrating, because that's not always the answer. There's going to be 100 different answers.
For sure. Yeah.
And so I love that you're not just asking about their blood pressure, you're asking about their family, their life, their day. And those are the things that result in a high blood pressure, because those can be root causes of stress, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And so you begin to put those pieces of the puzzle together, and it's such a blessing to know that that's happening in that doctor-patient conversation.
For sure.
Because we're so used to thinking, oh, the doctor's just not going to, you know, be any help at all when it comes to their nutrition. They're going to prescribe a medication. Right. And then we have to be the one to tell them, hey, we're going to try to get you off of this. And often we're going against what a doctor says in the form of, hey, we can actually improve your cholesterol through these changes in eating more fiber, or, you know, drinking more water. And they're like, well, my doctor said I can't have any carbs. So we're always having that battle.
Right. Oh yeah.
You know, I guess I'm just going on a rant at this point, but it's, you know, it's definitely a challenge, and the patients come in feeling that. And so that's why I love partnering with you too, because I can feel safe and comfortable saying, hey, go work with Tom. And he's
Sure.
a great guy. He's going to actually spend time with you and hang out and get to know what's going on.
Right. And to complicate that noise even further is everything that goes on in social media now. I mean, it's, everybody's an influencer, everybody's a medical expert. And I think probably in the nutrition space, and probably the other space where I see this a lot is in the men and women's health, specifically the hormone space. Everybody's an expert on it. Everybody has their thoughts. And again, I think what's important to know is that it's very personalized based on each individual, and it's not just, hey, take this supplement, or everybody follow a carnivore diet, or whatever. It's it's frustrating because not everybody fits into those boxes. But for the social media influencers out there, and I always say, look at where this is coming from. If you go down this rabbit hole with them and you find that they're ultimately just trying to sell you a supplement, be very cautious, because this is now just a business thing, and it's not necessarily based on sound science. It's just they're trying to make a business out of it. So there's just a lot of that noise that we have to push through, and I think how we kind of push through that noise is by trying to make things as personable as we can, trying to really get to know that individual and finding what's going to be the thing that makes it work for them, and not just, hey, take this pill, take this supplement, do this specific diet, and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, and I think that takes a lot of time to discover, and you can't just discover it from reading the chart. You have to look them in the eye, you have to sit down, and you have to pick up on those cues. Like, they might cross their arms when they talk about a certain subject, and you're like, well, maybe, if you don't feel comfortable, we can talk about that next time. Or maybe they say, well, actually, I do really want to talk about that. I'm just really nervous. Sure. So you build that connection. And I guess my question is, when you build that connection, what in their health or their mindset begins to shift? Like, do you start to see different outcomes?
Oh, absolutely. Because once I think the patients feel that you've invested the time to really get to know them, they begin to have confidence in you. They begin to have that trust. And so when you are making recommendations, they could see that it's not just, here's a pill. And obviously, as you know, there's going to be some health issues that, medications are going to be necessary.
Oh, yeah.
Even though we try to work with things as naturally as possible, there are reasons, genetic reasons, many other things that somebody has to be on pharmaceutical medicines. And I think when you really get to know somebody personally and they have that trust and confidence in you, they know that if you say, hey, I think it's time to do this or do that, they're going to be more likely to work with you on it, as opposed to somebody who maybe saw them for 5 minutes in an office setting, their head's buried in a computer, they're typing away, and they say, oh, you need to lose weight, and they walk out of the room. But if you've really spent that time and invested it in them, you could say, hey, this is the time you need to start doing this, because here's what I'm seeing, and you actually have the time to show them maybe abnormal blood numbers, or to share stories with them about what's going to happen if we continue to go down this path. So
yeah, and I think that makes such a shift. And then when you have that connection, they're much more willing to follow through and take the medicine if they need to, or see the dietitian if they need to, or work with the therapist. And coordinating all that care is so important. And so having that wheelhouse of people, it also makes you feel good. I don't have to worry about all this stuff. I can get someone else in the conversation and have them go a little deeper, because same with us, we're spending an hour with them, but we're not going to the gym every week with them. We're not coming to their doctor's appointment or working with the counselor day by day. We might call each other and coordinate the care, but it's a battle, and there's so many different pieces of the puzzle. Right. So do you have certain things you look for when you're like, hey, I think it's time to work with a personal trainer or a therapist or dietitian? Is there certain things where you're like, hey, this is the point where we got to switch it up? Sure.
Yeah, I think when you, again, invest that time with patients, and I could say from my standpoint, okay, you've got this condition going on. Say, maybe, take for example, we have somebody that's a pre-diabetic, and I'll say, look, your sugars are starting to get a little high. Here's what I worry about if we don't try to do something about this now. And we give them some basics. Here's some ideas on the Mediterranean diet, or here's a way of trying to eat more low glycemic eating. The things that I'm comfortable with, that I feel I have enough knowledge about, I'll try to guide them in that, and say to them, let's kind of revisit this in a month, come back in a month, we'll talk about it, let's check your blood work in 3 months. So by doing that follow through, and by being a little bit more invested in those individual steps that they're taking, you can get a good sense of when it's like, okay, we've tried this, this, and this. I think it's now time to enlist the help of that personal trainer or, the dietitian or whatever. What bringing somebody back, what steps have you done? Where are we at? Let's look back to where we were 3 months ago. Did we make progress? If we haven't really made that progress, and I think we need to go a little further than really kind of understanding where they're coming from helps me to know when that time is.
I love that. And I think that shows, their level of compliance and adherence. Like, hey, I did try all these things and it's
just
still
not
not
working.
really working.
Not sticking.
Yeah.
And so that's where sometimes the different perspective comes in. I'll be like, hey, go see Jarrod or go see, the personal trainer. Let's work on this together, because what we've tried, we're not getting to where we think we wanted to, or the goals that we set, we're just not hitting those. And we don't want to just keep spinning our wheels. And, again, by just seeing how they're feeling with, or how they've improved with those goals, and then also using some of the parameters like blood tests and things like that kind of helps us to know when we need to jump to that next step.
That's huge. Yeah. And so are there certain things you see a lot of? Like, is it primarily pre-diabetes or high cholesterol, or what's a common case?
Oh, it's still probably the number one thing in this country is cardiovascular issues. And so when you look at what are the root causes of those, it is going to be the high cholesterol, the diabetes, the high blood pressure. So those are probably the most common things we deal with on a regular basis in the office. And it's been like that in this country for decades. The cardiovascular has been the number one killer for men and women over the years. So I think when you see those things starting to develop, if patients can come in soon enough, we can see, okay, your blood pressure's a little bit up or your sugar's a little bit up. We can try to do things without pharmaceuticals at this time and give them some lifestyle strategies, hopefully trying to prevent them from going into that next step. Sometimes patients already come in where they've already progressed. Maybe they didn't know they had really high blood pressure, and now just dietary changes, lifestyle changes are not going to cut it by themselves, so we have to use the pharmaceuticals off the bat with the goal of trying to get them off of it down the road. But yeah, so it's still just kind of those things that you hear about all the time: high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, trying to get those looked at initially so that we can prevent those further problems, the heart attacks, the strokes, the kidney failure, all of those things.
Yeah, there's a lot of big problems that, not taking care of your organs can cause down the road.
Right.
And so, we get the classic situation that comes to our practice is someone's busy, they're overwhelmed, they have no time to focus on their health, or they just don't see it as a priority, because right now things are okay. We get a lot of 20, 30, 40-year-olds where they can get by kind of doing what they've always done, so to speak. And so how can we convince them to come in and look at these things? I don't always want to say, well, you're going to have a stroke if you don't do this.
For sure, right?
I don't want to scare people,
exactly.
But that
but you have to be honest
it's a
about
possibility.
it too.
Yeah. So how do you kind of dance on that line and say, listen, we have to make this a priority?
Sure. Yeah. And I think the first step is just getting them into the office first and foremost, because so many people, as you said, they feel good, and kind of the phrase I like to use is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So if you don't go in to get checked up, you're not going to know if you have these things going on. So I think the first thing, even though nobody likes going to the doctor, establish a good relationship with a family doctor, primary care doctor you can trust. And even if you just go once a year, just to kind of see where you're at, so that when we do identify these things at an early stage, we're able to take care of them before they progress to the other things. But again, just that honesty. I think if you get in with somebody that you can see regularly that you trust, then you would know that if this person that's sitting across from you, this healthcare professional that you trust, is telling you, somebody who really is taking time to get to know you, hey, I don't like what I'm seeing here. This is the possibilities of what could happen down the road. And you can even use some real world examples. Ask them about their family history. Hey, what did mom and dad have? What did grandparents have?
True.
Okay, how your dad had that heart attack. I don't want to see that for you. So here's what we need to do to kind of prevent that, or at least minimize the risk of it happening. So I think it's just getting people to understand that prevention should always be the key. Get in to see a family doctor, a primary care doctor that you trust, and then make sure that you're just being as honest and upfront with them as possible. Develop that personal relationship. And then from our standpoint as healthcare professionals, just, again, being honest with them and saying, okay, you've got these issues. If we don't do something about this now, here's some potential damages down the road, but we're going to avoid that, and this is how we're going to do it.
I love that. And the quote came to mind: "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." It's huge, and I love that because you get to spend this time with them. You can reference their family history. You know some of the genetic components, and I'm the type of guy, I try to be overly nice with my clients, and I'm like, hey, we'll figure it out, we'll work on it. But there comes a point where you have to say, listen, you're here for a reason. We want to get you results. We want to make sure you're getting what you came for, and we have to have this conversation. And so, and I love that you mentioned, getting them into the office visit is the big step. And so, something like this, kind of just speaking right to the audience, we're trying to build that trust with you right now. We're trying to show you that we care. And it's so important to say and take time and do these types of things, because they get to see, we're dealing with these situations. And my goal is that anything I do when we're making content and doing social media things, they're seeing, oh, that's me. That happened to me, or I'm going through this, or my husband hasn't been to the doctor in 5 years, and he feels okay, but his dad did the same thing and had a heart attack. And so, we want to uncover the veil and say, hey, this is what we're dealing with often, and these people are not alone in their battles. And so when we can get them in the door, I think it's very easy to get results. Like us personally, when they're sitting on this couch and we're having a conversation, the trust is built because they've already seen us. They've already began to get to know us.
Right. And I think it's important for healthcare professionals like us to do this because, again, there's so much noise out there. There's so many people that are self-proclaimed health professionals that maybe don't have the degrees, or they think because they've watched a few videos out there or read some books that they know everything they should know about this. And and again, there's a lot of good information out there, but there's a lot of noise, and it's fighting through that. So that's what forums like this, I think, are important, because of the fact that we as healthcare professionals can say, look, this is really what we see, this is what we do every day, this is what we're trained to do. And you may hear all these things on social media, but here's the truth of it. So kind of fighting through that's important. And like you said, getting into an office setting, getting a true professional that you can trust that's going to give you the best advice.
Yeah, and just kind of taking the time to work through that. And I like to think of us as a filter through that noise, where there's 100 different things we can tell a person, or a person can look up and attempt to do this week, but there's going to be one or two that matter the most. And as we make a connection with that client or that patient, we can recommend those things, and they can get that progress they want so much faster, and still in a healthy way, because they didn't waste all their time and waste all their money. Like you said about the supplements, there's so many people online selling supplements and meal plans, and none of it's going to be effective if you don't know why you need it. And if you can't, verbalize the reason you're taking something, you shouldn't be taking it.
Absolutely, 100%.
You need someone's opinion.
That's why I tell people it's a lot of people will come to me and they'll say, oh, I know you don't want me to tell you this, but I'm taking these supplements. I said, no, it's not that I'm anti-supplement. But what we need to know is, you need to know, why are you taking the ones that you're taking? Do you have a good understanding of what this is supposed to do? Or are you just taking it because you watched a Facebook video or a YouTube video? I had a patient recently that came in that, no kidding, was on like 20 different supplements.
Wow.
And they brought him in, and when we started going through all of this, we were finding multiple duplicates in the ingredients.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, wait a minute, you've got this, this, and this, and strangely, well, not strangely, I guess, not surprisingly, I should say, is when we did the blood work, there were some things that were kind of toxic for this person because they were taking these multiple supplements. The vitamin D level was really high, their B12 level was nearly toxic, the testosterone was toxic. So it's like, this is why you have to be very careful with these things, because they might say, well, this, ingredient A over here is good for you, but so is ingredient B and C, but not letting you know that they all share the same types of ingredients. And maybe, again, you're overdoing it with some of these things. So, it's just, like you said, trying to educate people that there are many different ways of doing this. You have to do what's right for you, and the best people to help guide you on that is not just watching a video or reading just one book. It's, an actual health professional that you can sit across the chair from, table from, whatever, and talk with them and really kind of, again, get to know you, do the checking that we need to do on the blood work, and kind of figuring out what's going to be the right thing for yourself.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, in that sense, what have you seen? What's been the most challenging for you in terms of cutting through misperceptions about nutrition, Jarrod? I mean, what types of things are you seeing? I know there's a lot of noise out there. What's the number one or two big things out there that you see?
I would say the overall volume of it. I think it's so overwhelming. I think you can pull up Instagram right now and you'll see 10 different things, and now Instagram, even if you're not following a page, it'll show up on your feed, and so you're bombarded and you're directly targeted because their algorithms are so good. If you like a supplement post, you're going to see another supplement post a couple slides later, and so now it's like, oh, I should be taking this. Oh, this girl's so skinny. Maybe I should look into this. And then you get sucked in these rabbit holes of all these different things. And like you said, we've had these situations where I always tell my clients, I'm like, bring in your supplements. Let's look at them together. And less is more. We can probably save you $100 a month.
Right, exactly.
Because you're spending $1,000 a month on all these 10 different products from these 10 different people who are not a health practitioner in the first place. They're like, a karate master or a super ripped personal trainer, they're like, this pill did this for me, and it'll do that for you too. But we don't realize you have other contraindications and different health things that you have to look at. And that's where a professional comes in. So we've sat down, we've had those conversations, and it's so funny you mentioned that story. I've had the same thing happen so many times. Like, hey, you're actually getting 1,000,000 milligrams of zinc, from 4 different things, and you're taking a multivitamin and also the individual vitamins and minerals in each bottle themselves. So to go back, it's overwhelming. I mean, they're bombarded with these things, and then you feel like, hey, maybe I should be doing this. Maybe there's 100,000 likes on this post. Maybe I'm missing something and I don't know. And a lot of people are taking initiative and they're exploring these things, and I love that and I encourage that. But I think you should have a trusted resource to check in with. And you can Google all you want, you can use AI all you want, but you need someone who understands more about you, because you're not Googling something and saying, I have a family history of this and I weigh this much and I prefer these foods. Is this supplement good for me? And you can't get an answer that's that personalized yet.
Correct. Yeah, and it's funny, I was just reading an article just this morning before we came in for this talk today that somebody was talking about, I guess there's a medical side of ChatGPT that's in beta right now that's going to be released. And I guess what they did is they took all of their data. You're supposedly able to use some of the smart devices and upload this data to this medical ChatGPT, and it's supposed to give you kind of an answer as to your health. And what was really funny about this article is they took their Apple Watch, I guess, and they kind of uploaded the last decade of information. However, they were able to export this information. Didn't understand exactly how they did it, but they were able to upload it into ChatGPT, the medical thing, and said, give me a grade on my heart health based on this information that I uploaded to you. And it came back with a grade of an F for this person. They're like, whoa, so they took this to their doctor, and the doctor was like, that's completely junk. And what it was looking at was, it was looking at different like heart rate variabilities and things. And it just kind of underscores the danger of not getting that personal touch, not getting that personalization, somebody who really knows you and can put it in context of yourself. You can feed as much of information as you want to into a machine, an AI algorithm, whatever, but if it doesn't know all of the context, again, you're not going to get good information out. And we see this a lot too. I get a lot of people coming in, I know I shouldn't have Googled, but I Googled this, and that's why I came in. I was worried about this. And I tell people, hey, I'm always good with you trying to educate yourself, but you have to be careful again with the information out there. And if you ever want confirmation, that's what I'm there for. Contact us with the way we do
that's our job.
Yeah, exactly. And with the way we do our practice, what I like with the direct care is the fact that I have that time. I'm not trying to see 20, 25, 30 patients a day in the office. We see a limited number. Patients have my personal text number. They have my personal cell phone number. They need something they can reach out at any time, so that if you have that question at 3 in the afternoon or 7 o'clock at night, hey, I've got this going on. I put this in the ChatGPT. Is this really a concern? I can kind of walk them through that. But yeah, unfortunately, because of the inefficiencies in the medical system, a lot of people are turning to that, between that and the unaffordability of it. And unfortunately, you're getting a lot of people with a lot of bad information out there. So it's been a challenge to fight through some of that noise.
It's no joke. It's so overwhelming. And I think that a lot of people, I feel comfortable telling our clients, like, you're coming for peace of mind. Right. Like anything I'm going to tell someone, or any dietitian on my team, is nothing we invented. It's
Right.
nothing we have designed to help you or created. It's all out there and it's all free somewhere, but we don't know what you need. We don't
Exactly.
we don't have something that we can bottle up and say, this is for Tom to help him with his goal of his health.
Right.
You can't just like piece that all together, even with the most advanced AI. And, because they're not understanding, hey, your vitamin D is 50 right now. That's really bad, but it was 20 6 months ago.
Right.
So, hey, you're doing great.
Right, exactly.
We have to factor in every piece of the puzzle. And that's where, looking things up in the online world, it gets very black and white very fast. And a lot of this is gray. Like, hey, we're improving. Hey, you just had a death in the family. You didn't get your meals perfectly proportioned, in the size that you need them to be.
Right.
Hey, it's all good. Life happens. We're not
Exactly.
going to yell at you. Where when you look at the numbers, you're like, hey, you did horrible this week. You ate 1,000 calories every day. You didn't get enough. But no, we had so much going on. It is what it is.
Right.
So I think that peace of mind's a big part of this, and the value is just checking in, having that resource. We're the same way. They can text us and they text us, hey, I'm going grocery shopping this weekend. One of my clients sent me a picture of her trunk full of fruits and veggies and protein.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
She's like, what do you think? Give me your honest
Right.
answer. I'm like, I'm so happy right now. I'm jumping up and down.
Yeah.
I mean, you are crushing it. And
Awesome.
I'm like, I want to see this next weekend too. And
Right.
just having that quick check-in is like, they're riding home like, yes, I did so good. Like, my dietitian's happy. Like, I want to give them that confidence and that motivation. And I'm sure you get the same thing. They come in, show you their blood work.
Oh, absolutely. I get
you're like,
text all the
"Great."
time of blood pressure numbers and heart rates and sugars and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. And I encourage people to do that. And this way, kind
Yeah.
of gives them the feedback to let them know, yes, we're on the right track for this month, or hey, what happened here, what happened there. We can kind of go through some of those things.
Yeah, I love that you do that.
Yeah, I mean, with everything that's going on online, is this why you think so many people are trying to kind of just fix things themselves, or do you see is it a monetary issue? Is it that they're just afraid to come in or don't have the time? What are the barriers that you guys are seeing from a nutritionist standpoint? Why do so many people try to do this on their own?
Oh, that's a good question. Really, I think it comes down to there's so many things, specifically in the nutrition world, there are so many things you can do or try, and because everybody's trying to make a buck. I mean, the diet industry is, I don't know, we'll pull up a
It's
stat.
billions. I mean,
but
it's crazy.
yeah, it's billions and billions
Yeah, supplement
of dollars.
industry alone, I think it's like 10 billion they said last year or something
Yeah,
like that.
wow.
Which is crazy because I get so many people that come to me and they rail against big pharma, but yet they're on all these supplements. I'm like, do you realize that the supplement industry is pretty close to big pharma at this point?
It's nearly
So,
identical.
yeah.
It's designed to keep you, there's no supplement out there that says, hey, you only need me for 3 months
Right.
and then never take me again.
Correct,
No,
right.
it's like, here, get your
Right.
renewal subscription,
Exactly,
get
yeah.
$5 off, you'll have
Right.
it forever.
Right.
It's, so like, they're trying to figure this out on their own because they're like, well, I just need to do what Sally did next door because
Sure.
she lost 20 pounds.
Okay.
But it's no, Sally is starving herself.
Right.
We don't know what's going on. And so they're talking, they're chatting, they're like, well, I'll try this for a while. And I think because nutrition is, it's a component of everybody's life. You have to eat
Sure,
to
right.
survive.
Right.
And so they think that because everyone is doing it, is eating and trying to work on things, that it's easy to just, start doing on your own and say, hey, this label says fat-free, this must be healthy for me. But
Right.
that's not always the case. And so we're trying to, I joke with clients a lot, we're going to have to help you unlearn a lot of what you've been taught,
Right.
because what you're being taught is, through good marketing and not always science and not always a health practitioner who
For sure.
understands the background and the, we build from the science first. We empathize with our client. We may not start with all the science. We might just build a rapport, get to know each other first, and then we say, here's what the science says when it comes to dealing with a heart issue.
Right.
We need to look at the fiber. We don't need to really harp on salt as much as we do water and potassium and fiber and movement, whereas everyone's just trying to avoid salt, but there's all these other components that you should run toward.
Sure.
And no one's really doing that. So when you Google something, you see something, you're like, oh, I can just remove the salt shakers from the house. That's great. I'm doing that. And
It's one little piece of the puzzle. It's not
Yeah.
everything, no, right?
And often sometimes there's those pieces of the puzzle that can have way more value and, be 80% of the solution. Whereas maybe in this person's case, removing the salt shaker is 5%. And maybe they need more salt. I've had people who have low salt because they've avoided it so long, and they're getting dizzy and they're having all these issues. So I would say, because it's so easily accessible, you can go to the store, you can fill your cart with what you think is best, and there's so much information to support whatever you want to hear. It's very easy to just start on your own and see what happens. But what happens is they don't get the result they're looking for, so they try something new, and every week or every month, depending on how long they feel they can ride it out, they'll keep trying new things, and there's this cycle that never really ends. And because of that, they feel like nutrition's just a big scam, and all these supplements are just a waste. And then so we're bottled into that way of thinking, and they think, oh, I'm just a dietitian's just going to take my money and waste my time. But no, we're trying to build a lifestyle and change everything about what you're doing, but also make you feel comfortable doing it. And not just put you on a diet. We don't do that. So it's very easy for someone to just jump in and try it out, but it takes a long time for them to really see, hey, maybe I need support, maybe I need a professional. Whereas a doctor, you're getting that respect. They're like, hey, I need to go to my doctor every year, and hopefully everyone's doing that. But
I think because of the issues like we've spoken about here just a little bit ago, the affordability of it, the inefficiencies of the system, it's driven a lot of people away from it. And it's just trying to let people know that, look, these are things that as all of us get older, something is going to happen to all of us. I don't care how healthy you are, what your family history is, something's going to happen to all of us. So it's important to start early, get in with a family doctor that you know and trust, that will take time with you, that you can bounce these ideas off of, and they can guide you to the right ancillary services if needed, whether it be dietitians, physical therapists. I think that I know I can help a lot of people in a lot of ways, but I don't know everything. I don't have exercise equipment in my office. I don't know specific meal planning. And I'll tell patients that. They'll come in and I'll say, look, I can give you some general ideas what we can do to help your nutrition, to help your weight, but I'm not a meal planner. I'm not a registered dietitian. There's people out there that I know, like yourself, that do a very, very good job at this, more than I'll ever know with it. So if we're running up against a brick wall here and we're just not moving in the right direction, let me get you to those people. But then again, you get into the issues of time and expense and those barriers. So you try to be conscious with that too. I don't want to just, I know there's so many other things that people have to do in their lives, and you can't just be going to doctors and dietitians and physical therapists all day long. So you have to be cognizant of what's important for that person, and at what point that we say, hey, it's time to get that professional help. What maybe some horror stories you could share with me, like when you think somebody's maybe gone, that you've seen here, that they've gone too far and like, hey, you should have seen me 6 months ago or a year ago. At what point, I guess maybe the advice would be, what point would you tell people, hey, I think you need to get help from a nutritionist or a dietitian? What point do they get stuck at?
That's big, and I was going to ask you the same thing, so I'll ask you after. We're always, because there's somewhat still of a stigma and a fear around seeing a dietitian, because we're thought of as the food police, and we're going to take everything good away from you. We don't do that, but a lot of people think that, so they wait until it's too severe. They wait until things are drastic. And for example, someone's on a GLP-1 and they've lost 40 pounds in the last 2-3 months. That's way too fast. And they've lost a lot of muscle.
They're atrophied.
They're having bone issues. There's things coming into the reports of, hey, there's some osteopenia going on because I've become weaker. And if only when they started the GLP-1 they called us at the same time. And we can say, hey, let's lose this weight you want to lose. That's wonderful. That's going to improve health outcomes, but let's retain your muscle mass. Let's avoid 100%. Digestive issues and constipation and, having that sunken look because you've lost muscle in your face and your legs and your arms. And so we get a lot of people after the fact, or when they've stalled out, to all in, and they've really hit a wall where, hey, they've been working hard. They lost 40 pounds on their own, but they did it by eating 1,000 calories a day. And so they come to us and they're like, well, what do I have to do? Do I have to eat 800 now? And we're like, no, we have to reverse diet up, which means to slowly increase the calories to get the metabolism to balance out and have some homeostasis. And so we have to dig them out of this hole that they've created for themselves because their metabolism has adapted so well to that low amount of calories.
Right.
And so we have to work up to 2,000, and they're not going to lose weight for 2 months because we're getting them back to an equilibrium.
Right.
And so then they're when we tell them that, they're like kind of mad. And we're like, well, that happened because of the actions you've taken that were a little too severe. And we want to get this right this time. So long term, number one, we get you the result and we stay there forever. That's always the goal.
Right.
But if something ever happens, you have the science behind it to know, hey, if I drastically drop my calories, my body is eventually, you might lose weight for a while, but eventually it's going to adapt.
Yeah,
to
I
that.
personally experienced that over 10 years ago. I did that.
Yeah.
I kind of drastically dropped my calories, and it worked for
You'll
about
see
4 or
a
5
drop.
years, and then all of a sudden it was just like that was it, and then slowly built back up over the time because of the fact that, like you said, your body gets into this different homeostasis, and if you start to slowly get away from that extreme calorie restriction, because you can't sustain that forever.
Exactly.
You start to put some of the weight back on, and it becomes even harder, and that's kind of the yo-yo dieting that we see people go through. It's
big.
It's very challenging to navigate that on your own, and so that's why again we just reiterate: find a good health professional that you can trust that can help you work through this.
Yeah,
it's hard to it's kind of why doctors shouldn't treat themselves. I know some of them do, but the reality is you do. Yeah, you need an objective view. It's hard to do it on your own, and there's things that you may not think of that somebody who does this all the time can identify by talking with you and kind of saying, oh, what about this or what about that? Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. So
I love hearing that. Like I just told a lady the other day, like we were like, why don't we just put the fruit in the door on the fridge, and it's a little closer instead of being behind all the stuff. She's like, oh, I never thought of that. It's something so simple, but it's so effective.
Right.
And having that conversation and spending that time, you can come up with those little things like that, and that can completely change the game. And so I just love that you shared that. You've been through those situations where that outside perspective is so helpful. And
for sure,
my goal is that we always just make it easier. We're never going to have someone come in and say, everything you're doing sucks. You have to do it all the way we think because we're the best.
Right.
We have to build the rapport and say, listen, you're working hard already. I tell almost everyone I talk to, I'm able to confidently say, you are working so hard right now. And I'm only going to help you make it easier.
For sure.
The work ethic is rarely ever the problem. A lot of people think we just get these people who just do nothing and eat a ton of food.
That's why I tell people it's not like you're sitting there. I tell them, look, I know you're not sitting there eating a dozen donuts every day. I get it, but here's some of the reasons why you're having trouble losing weight.
There's more factors,
right, and things that they don't think about. And I think the big one that I see so much is people want to diet, but they don't want to do the exercise. And I've kind of heard it before, 2 ways. You can't out-exercise a bad diet, and you can't out-eat no exercise. Or under-eat no exercise, So it's I tell people that you really have to do both. And if you need that help, certainly let us work with you. Let us get you to the right people, dietitians, physical therapists, whatever, personal trainers, in order to help kind of guide you along that path.
Yeah, I think that's big. And eventually, you can have a really good lifestyle and the nutrition components there, but you'll hit a wall if you're not getting some movement in. And vice versa. I feel like you can get the movement in, you'll hit a wall a lot faster if you're not getting the nutrition in. And so you have to look at it from that holistic approach. And that's why I love your model, because you're sitting there with them and you're addressing every component, every piece of the puzzle.
Trying to.
Yeah, and it takes time.
Well, that's the thing too. Yeah, I mean, we try to do a lot each and every visit, but again, I think the key with this is it's getting into your doctor, again, somebody that you can trust on a regular basis, because if you just go in, you're sick, that's all they're going to know you. If you come in with that cold or stomach flu, whatever, they're not going to get to know you the other ways. So you want to get there. And again, I understand the expense, the time, but that's why you find somebody that you can trust. Not saying that direct care is for everybody, but that's what I love about our model, because that barrier of the affordability of it gets reduced quite a bit. The accessibility is well beyond anything that's in the insurance-based system at this point. Whether it be a visit that day, a text message, a phone call, you have time for all those things, and somebody gets to really know you deeply and personally, so that they can guide you along this, because it's not just that, hey, I'm going to see you today and I'll see you again in a year and hope everything's good.
100%. And I think you have that approach where they can connect really well and feel comfortable having that outreach. And like you said, even with the affordability, like you are super affordable, you are very fairly priced, and it's such a good investment. But even, you're investing not just money, but your time and your effort. And
For sure.
often, if you don't pay now, in some way, you're going to end up paying later,
Right.
probably
Chronic
much
health
more.
issues. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and even the costs that you incur with those chronic health issues, whether it's medications or surgeries, procedures.
Absolutely.
It's an investment now, just like an investment in the stock market. It's going to compound, and you're going to have these lifestyles, these different habits that last you forever. And you can pass these on to your kids. Your children can understand the importance of protein on your plate, and
Right.
have a snack box at lunch that has some protein in it rather
Right.
than just crackers. And
Exactly, yeah.
so it's awesome to see that what we're doing is able to transcend not just the client, but that's why, like, our mission is we're creating diet-free homes one bite at a time, because we want to get the whole house involved, and we hope
Right.
that we can get the whole house as a client somewhere down the road. But also, usually we're working with the mom and they're busy and they're overwhelmed,
Right.
and we can help them prioritize themselves, and that allows them to help the other people in the house. And hopefully, maybe the husband's like, hey, my wife's doing so good now, I think I should go visit Tom.
Right.
I
Yeah, no,
should
and
have that.
I love that. I love that kind of generational passing on, because
Yeah.
I mean, all of us do it. We
Oh, yeah.
we
avoid
live what we
something.
learn.
Yeah.
And so, there's so many things that are passed on, bad habits. And I know just some of the things in my own family. We were a meat and potatoes family for most of our lives. And, my dad, he used to work for, there was a pop company here in town, soda company called Holly Beverage many years ago, maybe even
cool.
before your time. But he had worked for them part-time. And so we always had, when I was a kid growing up, we always had a lot of soda in the house.
Yeah,
so,
the good
that
stuff.
was just something that, continued into adulthood. And obviously it's not good for you, but I mean, it was always there. So again, we
There's a
lived what we
tradition.
learned. And so,
Yeah.
you kind of have that, and you kind of learn some of these bad habits, so to speak, from what you live in the house. So like you said, passing it on down from mom to maybe the dad, then to the kids, and generational thing. I love that approach to it. And like you said, creating a diet-free home, trying to just give you, it's not about just eating this way for 3 or 6 months. It's about trying to make a positive change permanently so that you can avoid some of these long-term health issues.
That's
So,
exactly the mission, and we're beginning to achieve that. We're seeing the whole house become involved, and it's such a blessing to see. And so, because old habits die hard, we all have these different things. So you're seeing a lot of different cases, and just like you kind of asked me, when it comes to the things you see, what could they have done 10 or 20 years earlier to prevent some of the cases that you're diagnosing or treating?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's just getting in to see a doctor and being able to figure out these things earlier. Getting a good panel of blood work done, looking at your kidney numbers,
big.
your liver numbers, looking at your cholesterol, looking at your sugar, checking the insulin levels, looking at some of these vitamin levels, cortisol levels, the stress hormone, all of these things. I think that, again, so many people for too long, because of the inefficiencies of this system and the expense of it, have just viewed doctors as, I'm just going to go when I'm sick. And we need to change that thinking about that here in this country. It's going to take some time. I think it's a cultural thing, and then again, because of the economics of it, it's so many different factors. But I think that the more preventative that people can be, getting set up with a doctor they trust, getting these blood panels done on a semi-regular basis to kind of follow along, those are probably the most important things I tell people. If you can do things in your 20s and 30s, and again, so many times you're just busy with life and you're working, you're trying to build a family, I get it, but establish those good habits now, establish good relationship with the doctor now, so that they can identify these things, so that in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, you're not dealing with that heart attack, that stroke, that cancer, whatever it might be.
It's big stuff,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It's got to be a priority.
Right.
I think having that awareness is such a blessing, and saying, hey, listen, I gotta go to my appointment, nothing's wrong, but
Right.
that's why I'm going. I'm
Right.
keeping it that way.
Right.
And a lot of people overlook that, and I think generally I'll give some credit to social media. I do think what is being done right and what is helpful for us is that the awareness is becoming at the forefront
Right,
of
I
our
agree.
conversations. So it's nice to
People are talking about it more, so
Yeah,
the more
it's
it brings it up,
amazing.
more people think about it.
Yeah.
But I think, again, we still have a lot of those barriers. Some of the cultural stuff, the understanding of that's getting better, but again, I think the main barriers are still the economics of it, and we saw this all at the end of last year with the Affordable Care Act and the expiration of the subsidies, and that's
big
where, again, we're
changes.
trying to help those people out, because I never tell people go without health insurance. You never know what might happen. There's something catastrophic that could happen. You need surgery, you have major illness, cancer, whatever. So if at all possible, try to have some type of health coverage for that. But with us trying to make things as affordable with direct care, again, we don't want that cost to be a barrier. We want you to use this as much as you can and be a resource for you. I kind of wish, and this is something that's talked about a lot in the direct care space, we wish that people would treat health insurance like auto insurance. We don't use our auto insurance to fill up our gas tank, to rotate our tires, to change our oil. If we did that, you know how expensive auto insurance would be, because everybody would be using it for those things. It would be absolutely astronomical. But what do we use it for? We get in a big car wreck. And then, okay, yeah, I got my deductible, but I can get the quarter panel fixed, I can get the body repaired, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think if we kind of took that approach with healthcare in this country and used health insurance for those things, it would probably make prices come down dramatically. But that's going to be a major cultural shift, because for the last 30 or 40 years, we've used health insurance for everything. We pay just for a checkup. You pay for it when you're sick, but you also pay for it just to get your annual physical, or and you feel like if you're not using your health insurance for those things, that you're being cheated in some way. So, I think that's going to take a big shift. But just like going back to the original point, we want to be as proactive as possible on trying to eliminate those barriers by what we're doing, or what you're doing. That's what we're trying to, I think that's the point to get across for anybody out there is, try to be as preventative and proactive as possible, because yes, we're going to be here for you when you're sick, but we don't want to see you get to that point.
Exactly. I think we're doing our best to avoid those drastic situations. And I think you and I both in our professions get the people coming in when there are very drastic situations. But I've also been blessed to say we've had a lot of people come in, they're like, listen, I just don't know a lot, and I just want to learn a little more, and I want to immerse myself in this from a qualified professional.
Right.
When they say that, I'm like, thank you.
Right.
Thank
Exactly.
you. Please tell other people that you're friends with that to do this, because it's so effective, and they'll never have to see us again. They'll work with us for a few months, they'll do their thing. But for you, on the other hand, they'll be able to
it's a
check
longitudinal
up.
thing. You need to, and again, not that we're trying to just incur more expense for you, but things change. And
But
things
there's
change for all of
value.
us. Right, there certainly is.
Yeah.
And things are going to change for all of us, no matter how healthy we may be, no matter how well we're dieting or eating right, I should say, exercising. Things are going to happen to all of us at some point, and the only way you're going to know that is by getting these things done. So if it's a little bit different perspective from between the two of us in that sense. Like, you're like, hey, I want to give you these healthy habits, and once we know you're on that track, hopefully you're not going to need us down the road. But for something like a primary care doctor, our goal is we want to build that long-term relationship, see when you're healthy as well as when you're sick, so that we can try to avoid those really bad things down the road.
Yeah, that's huge. And I guess I'll actually pull back on what I said a little bit. I think that there's times when life changes or your body changes and they do need to come back. And we encourage that. And there's, I want it to become where we're more of a preventative force, where, it would be amazing to see, and I hope to make a dent in our nutrition industry where we're having a biannual visit. And that's like clockwork. We have a patient or a client, and they come once a year or twice a year because we worked with women. They've done their thing. A couple years later, they're like, "Hey, I'm pregnant. I'm working on gestational diabetes. I want to make sure this doesn't happen." Or, I'm aging a little. I'm in my 50s, 60s. I want to work on my bone health. So I guess I've seen where they've come back, but it's for different reasons.
Sure.
So I think that's pretty cool. And I hope, just like a doctor or a dentist, a dietitian can say, "Hey, you're doing good, but when you turn 60, let's come back and revisit bone health."
It's that accountability too, knowing knowing that,
Yeah.
I've got that appointment coming up. I better start
Yeah.
looking at things again or really try to get this back on track. So, and that's what I'll tell my healthy patients that really, they're members of the practice, but they don't see us that often. I say, hey, just stop in every 3 or 4 months because it'll keep us looking at things and keeps you accountable so that this way we're not letting these things kind of go unchecked or out of control for, too long.
Yeah, I think that's huge. You can catch something way earlier and save them a ton of money and a ton of time.
Right.
Because you're addressing it and you prevented the thing from happening in the first place.
For sure. Absolutely.
And so we get the busy people. Everybody's busy. Everybody's overwhelmed. So with those types of people, which are probably all of our listeners, what's one small step or habit that they can do? And I think it's important to call us both, but what would be something they can do that's a little more actionable that you always go to recommend?
Are you talking about people, and I just want to make sure I understand right, talking about people that haven't seen us yet or people that are seeing us currently, or what? I mean,
I would say someone who's busy and doesn't really want to make the time and really hasn't worked with their doctor in a while or ever called a dietitian. What's a habit that they can put in place today to make them feel a little bit better?
I would say probably the biggest thing is just keep moving. And I tell my patients this all the time. I say, look, even if you have a busy job, there are a lot of jobs that people, or maybe desk jobs, what have you, but even if you're working in a factory or working on your feet all day long, it's not the same as like a regular physical activity. Because I see a lot of people always talk about the diet side of things or trying to watch their diet, which is important, trying to watch calories and eating more protein, less carbs. But so many, I think people miss the point of movement. So I'll say, make sure you're getting at least some regular physical exercise and not just in your job, but outside of your job where you can sustain your heart rate for 15 or 20 minutes. Because I see so many people, especially as some of our older patients get retired and they're maybe less active, it's crazy how fast some people can start to really decline in their health when they're not active physically and then mentally as well. So I guess
they go hand in hand.
It's staying active. I guess if that's the tip. If you don't know where to start, obviously again seek the help of a professional. At least get your basic checkup from your doctor, check your blood work, those types of things. But don't stop moving. Go ahead and make sure you're doing something at least 3, 4, 5 days a week. 30 to 45 minutes at a time. Find something you'd like to do, and I tell people this all the time. If you don't like jogging, don't jog. If you don't like the elliptical, don't use the elliptical. If you don't like lifting weights, you have to do some kind of light strength training, but find something you like to do and make sure you're doing that, whether it's playing a sport, whatever. Find something that you can exercise at, keep your heart rate up for that exercise for 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 4 days a week minimum. And I think that will, again, it's not going to fix everything, but it's at least a step in the right direction. So many people I see retire from their jobs and they're dead in 5 years because maybe they don't move anymore, they don't have a responsibility. You have to feel useful, you have to get out and move. So that would probably be the one very, very basic thing is, whatever you do, keep moving, stay active. But yes, at some point, get into your doctor, get your blood work checked. Develop a good relationship so you can take care of these things as things begin to come up as you get older. For the dietary standpoint, if we've tried some things we just can't seem to hit it, that's where I'll give yourself a call and say, hey, I need help with this patient because I'm kind of stuck. We've tried this, we've tried that. We need some extra help because here's some of the other health issues I'm seeing resulting from these issues. So, yeah.
I think that's a big one, and I really I just want to add. You mentioned the intentional movement, not just at your job or, I walked an extra lap at the grocery store, and that's good.
It's good,
them to do that too.
But
intentional, make the effort to invest that time and just fully focus on that movement that's where a lot of people overlook and say, well, I walked a lot today, we did a little extra, but no, go out and do that and make that part of your routine. And,
for sure.
And I think the small step would be just doing it once, get going, figure something out, but hopefully we can build that up and have that be a part of your schedule.
Absolutely.
So that's good stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's something really easy, really actionable. Everybody can do it.
Right.
So hopefully that, someone hears this and does that. And,
right.
And does a lot of things we talked about. And so I guess where can they find you? Where should they go? On Instagram or phone?
Yeah. So we obviously have a website like pretty much everybody out there these days. So ours is MahoningValleyDPC.com if you're in the Youngstown, Ohio area. We have people coming from Mahoning County, Trumbull County around here. There's even some that, actually a gentleman up by Aurora that comes and sees me. So
Good.
somewhere in the Northeast Ohio area, we're happy to help you out. We are on Instagram, Mahoning Valley DPC, on Instagram, Mahoning Valley DPC, on Facebook. So yeah, that's where we post frequent videos, health tips, as well as what the benefits are of direct primary care on our social media sites. And obviously on our website you can find out all the information about how our practice works, how we think this model might work better for you because of the accessibility. Patients can book their appointments right online. And you can always go ahead and give us the old-fashioned phone call. We still have actual phones
Never
that people
hurts.
actually. Yeah, I know that people actually pick up.
Yeah, that's fun.
We're not phone trees. We pick up usually on the second or third ring at the very worst. But
we try our best.
Yeah, exactly. So our phone number is 330-953-3250. But we're located in Austintown. And we are on Route 46. If you're familiar with the corner of Mahoning Avenue and 46, that intersection, there is a sandwich shop there called the Sandwich Factory. We are in an office complex called Crestwood Center, which is located behind the Sandwich Factory. So.
Perfect. So we're going to make sure we put all the links in the description, the phone number, the website, the address. Hopefully, we can get our clients to get to know you a little more and come visit you and prioritize that doctor's appointment. We really like coordinating care and looking at the labs and saying, hey, you got to get your labs done. We can use that data to really make much better changes, and that gives us that GPS to get to their outcomes. So we encourage the visits as much as we can, and we hope to continue doing that. But yeah, we hope to have you back on soon. And if you guys like this, if you want to hear more about certain topics, please let us know. Leave a comment, subscribe, like the video, so we know that we're doing things right and you're getting some value out of this. And we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity, Jarrod. Really appreciate it. Great talk today.
Of course.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.